Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Logify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.
Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, gang. How are we? Sarah, welcome back. We missed you.
Thanks. Yeah, good to be back.
We're seeing a new bunch of flowers. Always great to see.
Yes. Yeah, I've got a mix this week. I've got some that one of my colleagues, Sophie, gifted me the other day. She came in and said, after lunch, she said, "Oh, you just look like you were having a bit of a rough morning." Brought me flowers. So that was really nice. So now I've got them on full display.
Love it. Love it. Raphi, how are you, my friend? You doing well?
Yeah, pretty good. Nothing new to report. My life has been pretty relaxing and chill, so that's good compared to last week. Trying to, I don't know, catch up on some sleep and take it easy.
What was the feedback from your host event that you talked to us about last week?
Good feedback from owners, which is really the most important. And in terms of the team, we had a lot of points that we wanted to improve on for the next events. I guess organizing an event is never perfect. There's always stuff that sort of gets left behind or that we forget. And yeah, hopefully next time will be a little bit more organized and it'll be less stressful. But overall, good. I mean, the main point is that the owners got what they wanted out of it and that there was value.
Nice. And what are we now? So it's June, isn't it? So nice weather in Lake Annecy. Are people at the beach sort of jumping into nice warm water, or is it rainy, cold still?
The weather is all over the place. We had 2 days of sun this week, which was like the big news. It was like, oh my God, it's sunny. Let's go outside and enjoy. But otherwise it's just rainy and cloudy and it's weird. Yeah, not great.
Rubbish. I mean, I don't even want to let Sarah get all smug and cocky, but come on. How is it over there in Barcelona?
28 and sunny and beautiful. So no complaints.
Very nice. And
How
Sarah,
about
we gave you a week off. Oh no, England. I mean, look, I could actually for once. I could actually for once be a little bit smug because you said you got maybe 2 days of sun. We got 2.5 days of sun, so we're delighted. Oh. For us, that's good. We actually had some of our Barcelona crew came over to our London office, and they were so patronizing, right? They're like, "Oh my God, I love London! It's so cool, isn't it?" And as long as you're just happy to wear a jacket in the summer, I could live here. And I'm like, great, okay, good. Please lower yourself to our weather. But it's good that I don't have to because I can go back to the beach. And I was like, yeah, I'd love that. No, it's good. I don't know. I mean, I think summer in London's actually pretty good. It's not. There's always lots going on. It's festivals, things, outdoor things. It's nice. I think London's problem is it's the 10 months that wrap around the very short summer we have that are quite miserable. The summer itself isn't too bad. So yeah, I'm good. I'm feeling summery. We're yet to book our summer holiday. I think that's always a good moment, isn't it? When you get that fully in the diary. But we're still sort of managing the scrum that is having 2 kids. So we're still kind of keeping up with all that sort of stuff. But yeah, no complaints really. Sarah, we gave you a week off. I don't know why. Why do we let you have a week off? It doesn't feel right.
I went to a cumbia festival actually, like a music festival. So it was really nice actually. I didn't know any of the words. I didn't know any of the songs, but I've been adopted by this sort of group of Argentinian and Uruguayan friends, and they were like, "Oh, there's this great festival. You should come." So I went, and it was great. But it was really fun watching other people sing along.
Nice. Is that an event that people sort of go wild at? Is that a sort of alcohol fueled event, or is it more sort of wholesome than that?
I mean, there was definitely alcohol, but there was also families. I didn't drink anything because it was really hot outside.
And so I just had water and had a bunch of took advantage of the empanadas and the really good food. But at one point I did go to the bathroom, and when I came out of the bathroom, security was everywhere and half of the audience had climbed onto the stage. And so they stopped the performance until everybody got off the stage. So got a little bit rowdy, but it seemed wholesome.
Sounds slightly wild.
Yeah.
I love Barcelona.
I didn't see any fights or anything really awful. So let's see. That's
and Gag, before we start going through all your many SDR highlights, I'm sure you've got loads this week. What have you got going on? Anything fun? Anything booked? What's happening? Come on. I want to live vicariously through the fact that you guys can make plans. Oh no, that's what I wanted to say before we go into plans. Sarah, you said to keep you honest. Have you been going to the gym?
I did. I went 3 times this week. I even went on Thursday. So yesterday morning, I even went after I had a late night dinner, and I thought this is the perfect time to cancel. I even woke up in the middle of the night, canceled my class, and then I signed up again at 7:30, and I went anyway. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of myself.
Wow,
it was a miserable class, but that was my penance for going to bed too late.
Well played. Yeah, sorry, guys. Yeah, anything fun booked in? Anything upcoming, exciting? Raphi?
Potentially some wake surfing tonight. I've signed up to the club. There's a wake surf club here, and they have events that they organize once in a while, and then they basically privatize the boats as of 5 p.m. during these events for members only. So I might have my first try at the event and maybe go wake surfing. We'll see.
That sounds like a really fun thing to do on a Friday night. Well done you.
That sounds awesome.
Sarah, paddleboard yoga, beach volleyball, paddles.
I'm going to a vermouth thing tomorrow. It's like a vermouth event, and there's a bunch of local bars that all make their own homemade vermouth. And so they're all within a 5-block radius, and you just kind of skirt around to each one. And then they each have a special offer on a tapa and a vermouth. So very different vibes to Raphi, but I'm going to have fun.
Sounds very local, or is it touristy? I don't know. I can't decide. Is this a touristy event, or is it?
I'm not really sure. The flyer was in English, so it's a bit questionable. But all of the places, I mean, they're close to my house. I know most of them, and they do everything homemade. They make all of their own stuff. So, I mean, let's see what kind of crowd it attracts.
Sounds brilliant. I guess we've got our activity then for next time we're all in Barcelona, because that does sound like a lot of fun.
Vermouth tour. I'd definitely be down.
Go and scope it for us. Gang, I'll tell you what I'm excited about this week, SDR-wise. It's come out that our future king and his wife, so the Prince of Wales, Prince William, and his wife, Princess Catherine, stayed in a short-term rental when they were in Wales. I mean, how great is that? They stayed in their very own. They had an Airbnb for the week, and the host has just come out and written them a lovely review. Can you imagine that? Imagine if at OVO Network, you suddenly saw on the booking form, the Prince and Princess of Wales. How exciting, eh?
Yeah.
I bet the review's totally fake. They definitely trashed the place. I'm just kidding.
Was that a castle, or what kind of short-term rental?
Come on, they were keeping it real, Raphi. Don't dig them out. They live in a castle. They don't need to stay in castles, right? That's come on, don't be that person. It's a little cottage in Wales. I mean, he is the Prince of Wales. So it's the ridiculous thing is, why didn't he have his own castle? Why did he need to stay in a cottage in Wales? I don't quite get, but there you go. Yeah, even so, a very sort of humble cottage for our future king.
Wow,
there you go.
I love it.
Gang, let's get into it. I'm sure you've all dying to tell us your stories this week. Now, as we've got you, Sarah, let's start with the data. How are we looking in Europe so far this year? We've got the article has actually come from short-term rentals. It's an AirDNA special, April setback, offset by year-on-year growth in summer demand. Sarah, tell us what's going on with the numbers.
Yeah, sure. So basically there's a couple of highlights to point out. I think the first one is about listing growth. So this is continuing to climb, even though we're seeing ADR growth slightly declining. So when we look at ADR growth, there's some countries that are kind of leading the pack. So that would be Denmark with 15.3% average daily rate growth, Portugal 14%, and Hungary with 12.2%. Why is this happening? In all three countries, what we're seeing is a trend where there are more expensive new listings that are coming onto the market, and this is driving up the ADRs. So it's about the new supply that's really having that impact. Whereas if we look at countries that are lagging behind in year over year average nightly rate growth, we see Norway at -3%, Sweden at -3.9%, and Croatia at -6.4%. Why is that happening? It's basically new listings are being added onto the market at a rate that is outpacing the demand. So it's sort of the classic supply and demand curve where supply is much higher than the growth in demand, which is impacting occupancy and ultimately lowering the nightly rates. The sort of second highlight is actually good news. So summer 2024, we're on track to beat 2023 demand, which is awesome. It's meant to be sporting towards a record-breaking summer. So good news for all of you out there in the industry. When we look at demand that's already on the books for June through August, it's up 19% year over year. And June and July are seeing 17% growth year over year in terms of demand pacing. August, 22%. So looking really, really positive. If we look at countries that are leading the pack in this demand growth, we see, for me, some surprising ones. So Finland, 31% up from last year. Norway, 30%. Poland at 29%. Germany at also 29%. And then Czechia, or the Czech Republic, at 26% growth. And then if we go to the sort of the bottom 5 countries, but they're all still quite positive, high demand growth to me. We've got the Netherlands at 14%, Portugal and Croatia also at 14%, Italy at 13%, and Ireland at 12%. So even the losers, if you will, in this scenario are winning because they're seeing double-digit year-over-year growth. Kind of the third highlight is about booking pacing. So I'd love to get your insights on this later, Raphi. But the other sort of good news is that a lot of summer bookings still haven't been made. So if we're looking at booking curves and assuming that they're going to stay similar to what we had last year, if we look at the second week of August through, then basically there's at least half of the stays for that second week of August that have yet to be booked, if we assume at least the same reservation rate or higher than last year. Current demand on the books, we're looking at 20% higher than the same time last year. So even that sort of half of the bookings still made to be reserved, we think that's going to go even higher. And then the final sort of highlight is about booked rates. So we're also seeing pretty promising returns. We're looking at ADRs that are pacing about 9% higher for the months of June through August this year compared with last year. And then if we look at areas that had the highest growth, that's Denmark at 27%, the UK at 16%, Spain at 14%, Poland at 13%, and Germany at 13%. And then those that are seeing still mostly positive growth, but kind of lagging behind the pack, are Hungary at 5%, Norway at 4%, Sweden at 2%, Greece at 1%, and Croatia at -3%. So Croatia is really the only one that's seeing sort of that negative growth trend. So those are the highlights. I think a lot of this has to do with ultimately the European economy, which is starting to rebound. We're anticipating inflation to start recovering. So yeah, I'll stop there. It's a lot of data. I'd love to hear maybe from Raphi, like I know you guys are operating in a really sort of specific area, but would love to see if you're seeing some of these trends as well.
Yeah, so August is actually looking really good for us. We're seeing similar trends, maybe not the same level of growth, but we're almost over 50% occupied in August. And in terms of the pacing, it's going faster than last year. So we're good in August. July is a lot slower, and we're definitely not seeing the same occupancy levels. So we've been trying to scratch our head, like, what's going on with July? Why aren't we seeing as much demand as we did last year? And it's interesting because actually we figured out that the reason is because of the Olympics happening in Paris this summer. Companies are asking their employees to take those 2 weeks off for their summer holidays in order to empty out the city as much as possible in anticipation of the arrivals of people attending the event. So we have a large proportion of our guests are actually French people, and a large proportion of the French people are Parisians. So we're definitely seeing the impact on our July booking levels. But yeah, overall, it's looking good. And I think the only one thing for us is that July, it's coming up really fast. And when we're talking about, a lot of the bookings haven't come in yet, because we have larger properties, we can't rely on last minute bookings so much. I mean, historically, last minute bookings haven't really, we just can't really rely on them. People need time to organize, and they tend to book especially more than 2 weeks in advance. And yeah, generally more than a month in advance. So
even with that, that being said, Raphi, have you noticed a reduction in lead time on bookings, even in those bigger properties? Because that tends to be that seems to be an industry trend, right? People traveling more on a whim with families.
Yeah, I think overall we probably have. I can't say for sure because I'm not looking at that data myself, but I would say so, yeah.
And getting into these numbers, Sarah, same story on supply, right? More supply in the market than there was last year. But if we're seeing these summer trends seem to be positive, does that mean we think by the time the summer's been and gone that this additional supply will have all taken bookings in the most part, and we'll have more happy hosts?
Yeah, I mean, the increase in booking demand would seem to suggest that, with the exception of some of those markets where that supply is outpacing demand. We're definitely still seeing that there's room in the market for newcomers. I think the summer's a really interesting time as well for them to, maybe because demand is so high, then they can get additional bookings that maybe somebody's going to take a chance on them or make that first review. And the summer can be a really great time for them to capitalize on that demand. And then I think it's also something to keep in mind, both for seasoned operators as well as the newbies in the market, not to panic. Just as we talked about, people are booking a lot more last minute than they used to. And so it's a trend that we're seeing across the board.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Very, very interesting. I find it fascinating that we keep talking about overly zealous regulation, and that's such a hot topic in short-term rentals, and yet we're seeing all this supply growth still, year on year. It's really, really, really interesting. I wonder when the market correction will happen. And I say that because looking at the economic forecasts in Europe that you touched on, we're talking, I'm just quoting from the article, inflation likely to come down from 5.4% last year to 2.3%, right, by the end of this year. Employment rate slightly going up, 0.5%, and an increase in wages rise by 4.5%. It's all quite significant. That, dare I say it, we potentially have weathered the storm, right? I've just said it now. I've jinxed us, but potentially we've weathered the storm of what has been a really tough end to last year and start to this year. And potentially we go on to the next growth phase for short-term rental next year, and then the amount of supply we've got on the market looks about right. Don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that, but I'm an eternal optimist. But I feel like maybe the worst is behind us. Raphi?
Well, I'm really hoping you are right, of course. I'm looking forward to seeing what we see, because it has been a little bit of a struggle, this past year. And also with our owners, mainly our owners are just asking us so many questions, like, why am I not seeing the same booking levels as 2 years ago or 3 years ago when the pandemic hit, and suddenly we were seeing all this huge increase in demand in certain periods. But yeah, I'm hoping that this does end up going in the right direction.
Great. Sarah, anything else? Any thoughts on the number? Anything surprise you in the numbers?
Nothing really surprised me. I think the most surprising thing for me was some of the countries that were seeing the highest growth that I guess I just wouldn't have really thought about. So, I mean, the UK, Spain, like fine, but like Denmark, Finland, Norway, Germany, I think those were markets that kind of surprised me in terms of them outperforming the rest of the market. So I'd be curious to dive deeper into the data and kind of get more insight into what might be driving that. If there's events going on, if there's something new that's happening, or if it's location specific within those countries. So I'm not going to keep going on
about the Euro football tournament. I vowed to myself that I'd stop talking about it when you described the final as a finale. That was where I decided it was no longer
like, this is not my public.
So you'll notice I refrained from saying it at the start of the episode, but as we're talking about it, that's probably leading to an increase of bookings in Germany.
You want me to call it the grand finale? Will that make you feel better, Leo? Like, I was trying to make it seem exciting.
I'm going to send you both football shirts, by the way. I'm going to send you European team football shirts.
God.
Maybe we can do some sort of syndicate or something. I'm not. Forget about it. Okay, I know my public. I know you're not interested in this, guys. So let's move on. Great. Okay, cool. So Sarah, we'll definitely get you back next week, or in a few weeks' time, just to keep talking us through these numbers, because I think it is interesting. It feels like summer's heading in the right direction for operators, and again, let's keep focusing on it. Let's move on to one that we all wanted to talk about. We find this one, I think this is quite fun. So we're talking about, it's an article from FocusWire. As SDR industry copes with growing pains, quote unquote growing pains, and we'll all have opinions on whether this is how factually true this is. Home swapping enjoys a holiday, in brackets, referencing the film The Holiday, which I'm now going to be honest and say I haven't watched. I can't believe I've not watched it. Have you both seen it?
Yeah, obviously.
You haven't watched it, of course. It's my favorite movie.
Can you give a 30 seconds on the plot then? I feel like I should know that.
Go on, Sarah.
Raphi?
I mean,
Sarah?
Okay, so basically there's a girl from California and there's a girl from the UK, and they go on this home swapping platform and they swap houses, and then they each fall in love with each other's brother or cousin or somebody, and then end up swapping more permanently. It's a love story. It's a romantic comedy, Leo.
I'll watch it. I love romantic comedy. I don't know how I've missed it. I think it might even be like my parents' favorite movie. But they only have about 5 DVDs in their collection, so they just kind of watch the same 5 on repeat. We could go through that in another episode. Okay, so first question then for the group: have either of you ever done a home swap? Start with you, Raphi.
I have not. Not to my recollection. Maybe when I was a kid, my parents did, but I definitely, on a personal level, have not.
Sarah?
No, never.
Yeah, me neither.
Never.
Me neither. I'm all for it. I love it conceptually, but I'm too lazy to prepare my own house. I just want to go on holiday.
I've definitely had somebody house sit for me technically and make sure that my cats were fed and something like that when I went on holiday. So is that kind of a house swap? But still not, because I didn't go to their house. I went somewhere nice.
How do you know the cat sitter didn't have a nice home? Come on, Sarah. Come on.
I'm sure they do, but like they live in Barcelona, so no point. It's not very fun swap.
Yeah, true. Good point. Well, I love the home swapping industry. We have a few clients in that area. I've never done it, but I think it really, as a family, it maybe you come into your own right on this when you're traveling with kids and you know that the rooms are set up for other families, right? So maybe they've got the soft play area, the stair gates, and it's quite nice. You pick and choose. Anyway, according to the article, home swap's having a good year. The article suggests that could be partly due to the rise in remote working, so digital nomads saying, I'm going to spend the whole summer here. And actually, if you're going to spend the whole summer somewhere, of course you want to be in a neighborhood, not really in a tourist hotel in the middle of town. Another suggestion being it could be travelers' heightened sensitivity to over tourism. I think that might be playing a part. Raphi and Damien and I, it was something we were talking about last week. People are definitely aware of that, where they're traveling and what their footprint is when they go. And then the obvious one, which is the economy, right? The rising cost of living. We've just talked about it in our numbers when we've looked at the first half of the year versus potentially where we're going now into summer. Does those obvious ones then, fans of the home swapping culture would say it's about the more human side of the transaction, potentially something that OTAs have lost as they professionalized? I don't know. I don't know on that score. I don't buy into that fully. And then regulation, right? So it's hard to find a place in Scotland now because of the licensing scheme. And in the article, as the article explains, home swapping has been excluded. New York's a great example. When I was a lot younger and I was helping build One Fine Stay, we had a really good business in New York. And then in about 2 years, it was just completely decimated by the regulation. So I agree there's that. And then the big one is trust. You know that you're going the other way and someone's preparing the home and you've met them and this is a pre-internet idea. Home swapping's been around for a long, long time, but the internet does make it a much safer thing in the sense that you have video calls with that person, you chat with them, you go a bit deeper. So I think it's great. I don't think it's purely driven by the economy. I think it probably has something to do with this idea of people wanting to live like a local, and it's a really effective way of doing that. And the fact that people work remotely, we're all doing it ourselves, right? I don't think there's much expectation that people are going to be in their offices over summer. We can do it remotely. So even if you work a couple of days a week during spring and autumn, the summer is a good time to go abroad. Or for us in London, January is often a good time to do it. Go somewhere hot for a month and bed in because the weather's so awful. The problem is, how would you convince someone to come and stay in London in January? That would be your challenge. And in terms of the SDR industry, I think it's just something we should definitely embrace. I think if I was managing property, I may even embrace the fact that my owner would also use a home swapping platform, and it gives them a taste of being a guest, which also helps you become a better host. My slight challenge to the article would be, clearly it's growing, but the short-term rental industry is due to grow significantly too. And Sarah, you've just shown us the numbers into summer. The slight challenge would be that I don't know how unique the inventory is, because I think if you're the sort of family that home swaps, you're probably also the sort of family that puts your home on an OTA and also uses that money to fund different holidays, or just goes and stays around the corner with family just to make a bit of extra revenue. The example I would give is the family that lives in Wimbledon probably during the tennis cashes in and gets out, and then maybe in August swaps with a French family and goes over to France. So I think that the lines are slightly more blurry, but again, my view is, as an industry, we should be embracing it, because I think it makes for better hosts and guests, make a better experience, and ultimately keeps people out of staying in hotels.
I think for me, the challenge with a home swap is, how do you make it fair, right? So just as you mentioned, like, I had a client several years ago that was working on some kind of similar idea, and their, I guess, solution to this potential issue or problem was to assign based on dates of stay. So just like you mentioned, like if somebody wants to go and stay in Wimbledon during specific dates, that's obviously worth much more. So maybe that's worth a 2-week stay at somebody else's place. And so it was like a home exchange platform. So there was no money exchanging hands, but they would assign some sort of a credit value based on the seasonality and the type of property. So maybe if you're staying in, I don't know, switching it out for a studio flat by the beach, that's slightly different than if you have a huge country house that fits 5 people. And so I don't know if a lot of the home sharing platforms even account for something like that, but I thought it was an interesting concept and idea, and something that I'd never really thought about when it came to home swapping. I guess I just assumed that whoever was doing the swap, you'd have to coincide on the dates and things like that. But it opens up an interesting opportunity if you can find a scoring system for it.
Yeah, that's exactly. I was looking into that too, because I really don't know much about home swapping. I've never experienced it myself. And I was wondering, I mean, if you're, say you have an apartment with 3 bedrooms, does that limit you to a holiday in another apartment with 3 bedrooms? Or do you still have an opportunity to do something a bit more special? Because I mean, we do like to treat ourselves when we go on holiday. But then how does that work? And it is a point system. So it's like, I guess it's how many times do you host people, and then you gain points, and then you can use those points on your holiday the next time. So it is interesting. But then I think that one of the things for me in all of this that's maybe not so, I mean, I don't know, in terms of like the sustainability of it, is that these people have to host as many times as they want to travel if they don't want to be spending, on travel. And I don't know how much do we really want to be hosting just to make up for like an upcoming travel, is my question.
I think that's right, Raphi. I think that's to my point, which is, I think you'll have some hosts who also list on OTAs because they want to monetize the space more, and then but I think it's 1 holiday a year home swapping. I think I don't think anyone home swaps more than once a year. Might be wrong, because it's whether you monetize your home in other ways or not. I just think it's not. It's a lot of effort to find. It's slight needle in a haystack thing, right? Where you're looking, how many different experiences can you find at the same time that someone wants to swap and have your experience? I think that's why I think it sits nicely. It complements SDR. I don't think it's a replacement for SDR. There's a client of ours, and they have anyone who has a second home can join the club. And then it's exactly the point system, right? So it's everyone puts their second homes on. And in that respect, it's a bit like a swap. But to your point, you both mentioned the point system. You can then just accrue points all year and then use them the following year if you want to go and stay within the club. And that's, I think, what works really well, because no one has to be preparing the home and trying to make calendars work. It actually, maybe it's not even a home swap, but you're essentially anyone who's wealthy enough to have that second property can be in the club, and then that's the same. No money changes hands. It's about the points, and that is a very interesting model, I think, too. Gang, I'll have to go on a home swap and try it. I'm the one who's at that time of life, so I think it's on me to go and do it and let you know how we get on. I won't show you around my living room, but if you could see how much mess was here now, you could probably understand why that's never going to happen. We can't leave without talking about the Wall Street Journal article. So we're just going to have to go a bit over time, aren't we, I think, because it's a really interesting piece. So Raphi, you're talking about an article, as I say, from the Wall Street Journal, which is really interesting, which is Airbnb's secret weapon to fight state laws, its hosts. Raphi, tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so this article is talking about how individual hosts are essentially becoming influential in opposing state regulations on short-term rentals in the US. It talks about many little anecdotes of individual people who have actually made huge differences. And really the point is to say that, we have all these regulations coming in from different angles. We have the hotels that are against us. We have the housing regulations, the neighborhoods, all of those different groups of people. And maybe we should be leveraging, as an industry, we should be leveraging the fact that our industry is composed of all these individual hosts who are, at the end of the day, emotionally invested in their business, which isn't necessarily the case of these other groups of, like, the hotels. It's mainly people who are just simply working in these hotels, but they don't have that emotional investment. And so the advantages of having the host represent sort of our voices is that there's that emotional aspect of things, which just makes the argument much stronger. And that's what they're really leveraging in the US. So we have the companies such as Airbnb and Expedia, which are sort of taking a back seat and funding the movement and, maybe taking care of some of the operational side of things. But then the hosts are really kind of at the forefront. And I think it's really interesting. I'm wondering, I think that in Europe, we're maybe not doing that quite as much. Do we think that this is something that we should be leveraging a bit more in Europe? I'm keen to hear your thoughts.
Sarah?
I think in Europe, it's a lot more difficult to leverage some of that, because I think in particular, everything is so hyper local in Europe. I think it's a lot easier in the US, where you can take something that happened in another state and then you have precedent. And it's a lot easier, I think, to have the follow through from a legal perspective, because even though you have some things that are regulated at the state level and some that are regulated at the city or county level, more or less the laws kind of align, right? There's some sort of national law that kind of governs everything. And so I think it makes it a lot easier to use host or use those things to gain momentum much more quickly in the US. I don't think it's impossible to do in Europe. And I think it's even more important for us to try and do that in Europe, where historically regulations have been a lot harsher, I think. And ultimately, if the hosts aren't getting involved, I mean, most of the evidence that brings these laws about and these regulations is anecdotal anyway. It's like, oh, well, some neighbor complained that there's too many Airbnbs. And so then they take a complaint and then that gets an investigation, and then nobody looks at data, and they don't often investigate the other side of things. So I do think it's extremely important for our voices to be heard in Europe. I think the challenge that we have that we're going to have to overcome is how we deal with all of the different local, federal laws, unless we can find some sort of way of doing that at a European level, minus the UK because you guys left. But it's I think that would be the only thing that would actually work. But I think it's going to be nearly impossible to do something at that super high level.
Breaks my heart, Sarah. Every time I hear it, breaks my heart. Why
Sorry.
did we leave? What a mistake. I agree.
Did you
Sarah,
even leave? Because Barcelona's full of you guys. I think you didn't even leave. Just kidding.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. No, I'm glad to hear we're still there. Maybe we're waiting to be kicked out. I think Sarah's bang on. Absolutely right. I totally agree with that. US one joined up economy really shared values, shared language. I know there's nuance in there, of course. Just the commonality of language, I think, really helps in terms of learning from different groups. Shout out to my buddy John Hildebrand in Arizona, who runs the AZRT, and they've had real success locally by bringing a huge community of hosts. And I'm now going to get the numbers totally wrong, but I think they've got something like 1,600 hosts like as members, and it's phenomenal just in that one thing. It might even be more than that. So John, if you're listening, please comment, or you can correct me and I'll reference it next week. And it's amazing because you can then start to push back on policymakers. And to go back to Europe and the UK specifically, and I'm obviously involved with Star, and Star are really focused on getting more hosts on board. Andy, the CEO, is probably, the number one thing he says whenever we meet is, we need more individual hosts because they're out there. We need them to join, and we need to be their voice because they are everywhere. That is actually what's powering. I think I read something the other day, and again, take it with a pinch of salt because I read it on LinkedIn, but 90% of all the hosts manage less than 5 properties. So, this is the industry. This is the backbone of the industry. And, if Airbnb walks into an office, then they are seen as a tech platform and they're treated in a different way. And if you go to your local MP's office and say, this is my livelihood, this is my business, it's very, very hard to say no to the volume of individual hosts, right? Because policymakers the world over are terrified of losing their seats. And what makes them think they might lose their seats is, oh, wow, I've got 15,000 people in my constituency who in some way, shape or form are connected to this industry. Either they work in it as a cleaner, a property manager working for a wider company, or a host owning their own property, right? They're in some way connected to it. That actually is what moves the dial. So I think it's a really, really interesting article. And I think there's definitely lessons for us in Europe. Undoubtedly challenges around like cultural lines, but definitely some learnings that we could have there.
Yeah, I just want to finish on one point is that, so this article was saying that they've seen an increase of 35% of hosts in the US since the pandemic. And then I was curious, I was like, well, how many, so in the US, that makes for about 790,000 hosts. And I wanted to know how many hosts we have in Europe just to sort of compare. And it turns out that we have 1.4 million hosts, which is more than any region in the entire world. So I think that's like, it's a pretty compelling number that we should definitely try to leverage in the ways that we can. I mean, given the complexities of, Europe and all of that, but definitely something that we should try to leverage as much as possible.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, and also it can be a host that works with a larger property manager, right? Like when you join that property management company as one of their hosts, you could also be given a membership to the association. It's still the same principle. It's the volume of it, even, and then it's the individual person who's monetizing their property, not the property management company. Really, really interesting. I think we're going to do more on this because we're definitely way over time, but I think we're going to do more on this one as it progresses. And I think, come on, there's 1.4 million of us out there. Let's get together. Let's do something. Guys, it's been lovely hanging out. Raphi, so nice to see you. Enjoy your wakeboarding tonight.
Thanks.
Sarah, enjoy the drinking.
Thanks. It's going to be fun.
I imagine there's probably drinking after wakeboarding. There's the drinking after wakeboarding, Raphi? There must be, right?
There is, yeah. There is. I'll be doing some of that as well. Makes me feel better.
All right. Lovely to see you both. Take care.
Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Logify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.